The scream still echoes in my head. It came from the other side of the thin wooden wall, so sharp and desperate it nearly stopped my heart. I remember dropping the spoon in my tea and rushing barefoot across the hallway. The door to my sister's room was wide open, and there she was, Lena, crouched on the floor with blood running from her lip, her hands shaking as she tried to shield herself. Above her stood Mr. Givens, our landlord, his hand still in the air, red and trembling. His belt dangled from his other hand, the metal buckle glinting in the dull light bulb above. "You ungrateful brat," he shouted. "Don't ever lie to me again, or I swear." I didn't let him finish. I don't know what came over me. I had never hit anyone before. But in that moment I saw Lena's swollen face, her torn dress, the terror in her eyes, and I lost it. I grabbed the hot kettle from the table and threw it at him. The boiling water splashed onto his arm and chest. He let out a howl so loud the windows shook. His belt dropped. He stumbled backward, clutching his skin as it blistered. "You'll regret this," he screamed. "No," I said, stepping between him and Lena. "You will." That was the day everything changed. That was the day Mr. Givens made a mistake he would regret forever. But to understand how we got there, we need to go back to the beginning. It all started the day Mama died. She was the thread that held our little world together. When her heart stopped that cold morning, it felt like the world did too. I was 15, Lena only 11. There was no one else, no father, no aunts, no cousins that would take us in. Just the two of us in a house that didn't belong to us anymore. Mr. Givens was the owner of the house we lived in. Mama always paid him on time, cleaned the porch, kept the garden tidy. He never liked us, said we were too much noise and not enough money. But Mama stood tall against him. She never let him push us around. When she died, all of that protection vanished. We were two kids in a house the landlord wanted back. At first, Mr. Givens pretended to be kind. He brought us bread, even helped arrange Mama's funeral. But soon after the dirt settled on her grave, he changed. "You can't stay here for free," he said one afternoon, tapping his long yellow fingernails on the kitchen table. "Rent's due at the end of the week. If you can't pay, you'll have to find somewhere else." I tried to speak. "But I'm only 15 and Lena's just a kid. We don't have any money." "That's not my problem," he snapped. We had 1 week. I spent the next 7 days looking for any kind of work. I washed windows, carried groceries for old ladies, even scrubbed toilets at the gas station. I earned just enough to pay half the rent. I begged Mr. Givens for more time. "I can get the rest soon," I said. "Just give me a few more days." He leaned in close. I could smell the sour tobacco on his breath. "You'll pay in one way or another," he muttered. "And maybe your sister can help too." I didn't like how he looked when he said that. It made my skin crawl. From then on, I kept Lena close. I made sure she never stayed alone at the house when I went to work. But one evening, after a long day scrubbing dishes at the diner, I came home and she wasn't there. My heart pounded as I checked every room. I found her in the garden shed, curled up and sobbing. "He tried to come into my room," she whispered. "He said he just wanted to talk, but he locked the door." That was when I knew. We had to leave. But where? We had no family, no money, and nowhere to go. So I started hiding money. Every coin, every dollar I earned, I tucked them inside the lining of my coat. I told Lena to keep her school bag packed. I told her never to open the door if I wasn't home. I made a plan. I was going to take Lena and run. But Mr. Givens was watching. He noticed when I stopped asking him for food. He noticed when Lena stopped talking to him. He grew meaner, bolder. He would enter the house without knocking, pretending to check the plumbing or fix the wires. One night I found him going through Mama's drawers. "I'm just making sure you kids aren't hiding anything," he said with a smirk. I knew then. He wasn't going to let us leave. One Thursday evening the rain came down hard. I had just come back from town with half a loaf of bread and a few coins from cleaning windows. Lena was unusually quiet. I asked if she was okay. She hesitated. Then she told me. "He said if I didn't let him in, he'd take you away from me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He said he could put us in a home. That he knows people." I felt cold all over. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed by the door with a hammer in my lap, waiting. He didn't come that night, but he came the next day. It was mid-afternoon, the sun out and birds singing like nothing was wrong with the world. I was in the kitchen boiling water when I heard Lena scream. I ran. And that's where we are now. Mr. Givens on the floor, scalded and writhing. Lena crying in the corner. And me standing between them, shaking but unbroken. He stumbled to his feet and pointed a shaking finger at me. "You'll pay for this," he growled. "I swear." I didn't flinch. "You already lost." He left that day, but it was far from over. Because the next morning, the police knocked on our door. They said someone had reported us for assaulting a respected landlord. They said there would be an investigation. They said Lena might be taken into protective care. And just like that, we were right back in danger. But I wasn't going to let them take her. Not ever. Because if they did, I had a plan. And it would make Mr. Givens regret everything he had ever done. The police stood on our porch with their black boots wet from the morning rain. One was tall and thin with a sharp nose and cold eyes. The other was shorter and rounder, with a mouth that never stopped chewing gum. "We're here to follow up on a report," the tall one said, flipping open a little notepad. "About an assault." My hands tightened around Lena's shoulders. She was hiding behind me, her eyes wide and red from crying all night. "What kind of assault?" I asked, trying to sound older, braver than I felt. "Mr. Givens says you attacked him without reason. Scalded him with boiling water." The shorter one said, blowing a small pink bubble that popped loud in the silence. "Claims he was just checking on you girls. Says he's worried about your safety." I felt a flash of heat in my chest. That man had nearly hurt my sister, again. And now he was trying to play the hero? "He's lying," I said sharply. "He was hurting my sister. He's been creeping around, breaking into our house without permission. He hit her. He locked her in her room." The officers glanced at each other. The tall one sighed. "Do you have proof?" Proof. The word hit me like a stone. Of course we didn't. Lena had bruises, yes, but they were already fading. And there were no cameras, no witnesses. Just our word against his. "He's dangerous," I said, my voice cracking. "Please, you have to believe us." They didn't say anything for a long time. Then the tall one closed his notebook. "Well, we'll make a report and look into it. But in the meantime, we have to notify Child Protective Services. It's protocol when there are minors in a potentially unstable situation." No, wait," I said quickly. "We're fine. We don't need anyone else. Please. Just give us a chance to figure this out." "We're not here to break up families," the round one said, his voice gentler now. "We're just doing our jobs." They walked away without handcuffs or warning slips. But their message was clear. We were on thin ice. As their car drove off, I turned to Lena. "Pack your things." She looked up at me, confused. "Why? What's going on?" "We're leaving tonight. We can't wait anymore." And I meant it. I didn't care where we went. Under a bridge, into the woods, halfway across the country. We just couldn't stay under Mr. Givens' roof another night. I went into Mama's old closet and pulled out the shoebox where I'd been hiding our money. It wasn't much, maybe $80. Not enough for a bus out of state, but maybe enough to rent a room in one of those old motels outside of town. I made 2 peanut butter sandwiches, stuffed our clothes in trash bags, and told Lena to put on her boots. We waited until nightfall, slipping out the back door like ghosts. We didn't get far. Mr. Givens was waiting at the front gate. His face was still pink and cracked from the burn. His arm was bandaged in white cloth, but his eyes, those eyes were wild with anger. "Where do you think you're going?" he snarled, stepping in front of us. "Move," I said, my voice steady. "You don't own us." He laughed. "I don't. Well, the state might disagree. Did you know I'm friends with the CPS director? Funny how quick they take action when a landlord calls in." I took a step forward, blocking Lena behind me. "If you touch us again, I swear." "Oh, don't worry," he said, grinning. "I won't have to. The system will do it for me." I looked over my shoulder. The street was quiet, no one around to help. No neighbors, no cars, not even a light in the window. "I'll scream," Lena whispered behind me. "Go ahead," Mr. Givens said with a shrug. Let's see who comes. That's when I realized we couldn't run. Not yet. So I pretended to give in. Fine, I said, lowering the trash bags. We'll stay. His smile stretched across his ugly, peeling face. Good girl. But in my head, I was already building a new plan. Something bigger than just escaping. If the law wouldn't help us and the neighbors didn't care, then I would take matters into my own hands. I would make sure Mr. Givens paid for every single thing he'd done. Not just to us, but to others too. Because I knew we weren't the only ones. For the next 2 days, I played the part. I acted quiet, obedient, like I'd given up. Lena stayed in her room, and I told her everything was going to be okay. But at night, while the house creaked and the wind tapped at the windows, I went through the landlord's files. There was a tiny room at the end of the hall, where he kept his metal filing cabinet. He always locked it, but I had found a way to pick the lock using Mama's old bobby pins and a broken hair clip. Inside I found contracts, overdue notices, scribbled notes, and something else. A folder marked private. It was filled with photographs. Some were blurry, others clear. But every single one had something in common. They were all girls. Young girls. Most of them scared. Some of them bruised. My stomach twisted as I flipped through them. Names were scribbled on the back of each photo. Daisy M. Rachel T. Even one that said just Chaos with a date next to it. Lena wasn't the first. And if I didn't do something soon, she wouldn't be the last. That night, I made a new promise to myself. I wasn't just going to run. I was going to destroy him. But the very next morning, something happened that I hadn't planned for. Someone knocked on the door. It wasn't the police. It wasn't CPS. It was a girl. She looked about 18, with short red hair and a purple hoodie. She had a small suitcase in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. "I'm here for the room," she said. I blinked. "What room?" She looked confused. "The ad said there was a cheap room to rent. Said I could move in today." I called the number. A man answered. Mr. Givens. He was bringing in another girl. I told her to wait outside and slammed the door shut. He was sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea with his bandaged hand. "You invited someone else to stay here?" I asked, trying to keep the rage out of my voice. He didn't even look up. "Rent's rent. I'm running a business." "You're bringing another girl into this house?" He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Maybe she'll be more grateful than you." That was it. That was the moment I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act now. And that night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I broke into the old hardware store down the road. I stole a crowbar, a hammer, and a bottle of kerosene. I hid them beneath the floorboards in the attic. Because the plan was no longer to run. The plan was to end it. But just as I sealed the attic door and crept back down to check on Lena, I heard her scream again. Only this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from the sound of glass shattering downstairs. Someone had broken into the house. And it wasn't Mr. Givens. It was someone else. Someone worse. I asked, trying to keep the rage out of my voice. He didn't even look up. "Rent's rent. I'm running a business. You're bringing another girl into this house?" He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Maybe she'll be more grateful than you." That was it. That was the moment I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act now. And that night I did something I never thought I'd do. I broke into the old hardware store down the road. I stole a crowbar, a hammer, and a bottle of kerosene. I hid them beneath the floorboards in the attic. Because the plan was no longer to run. The plan was to end it. But just as I sealed the attic door and crept back down to check on Lena, I heard her scream again. Only this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the sound of glass shattering downstairs. Someone had broken into the house. And it wasn't Mr. Givens. It was someone else. The sound of the glass shattering jolted me like lightning to the spine. I rushed down the hallway, heart pounding, fists clenched. Lena was already out of her room, barefoot, clutching her stuffed bear, eyes wide with terror. "Stay here," I whispered. "Don't move." She grabbed my hand. "Please don't go." "What if it's him?" "It's not," I said, but I didn't believe it. I crept toward the kitchen where the sound had come from. The window above the sink was smashed. Glass sprinkled across the tiles like frost. The curtain flapped wildly in the night wind. A shadow moved just outside the frame. Then a leg stepped in. A figure climbed halfway through the broken window. That's when I saw his face. It wasn't Mr. Givens. It was a boy. Maybe 17 or 18. Pale, skinny, shaking. His clothes were torn and dirty. His eyes sunken with fear and hunger. "Please," he said, freezing when he saw me. "Don't scream." I didn't. I didn't move at all. For a second we just stared at each other, both scared for different reasons. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said. I just needed a place to sleep. I saw the light. I didn't know anyone was home. I grabbed the broom by the wall and pointed it at him. "Who are you?" "Name's Kenny," he said, lifting his hands slowly. "I used to live around here. Moved out when I turned 16. Been on the streets since." "Why this house?" I asked. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Used to rent the basement room. 2 years ago. Didn't last long. The old guy Givens, he was a freak. That got my attention." "What do you mean?" Kenny hesitated. "You his kid?"
No.
He nodded slowly. "Good. Then you should get out. While you still can." I lowered the broom just a little. "Why? What happened to you?" He glanced down at the floor, at the broken glass under his boots. He said I didn't belong there. Said I was trash. Beat me when I couldn't pay rent 1 month. Then one night I heard screaming. Not mine. A girl's. I tried to help and he threw me out. Told the cops I was stealing. They believed him. They always do. My chest tightened. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "No," he said. "But I know I'm not the only one." I believed him. I also knew then that Kenny could help me. "You hungry?" I asked. He nodded. I gave him half a sandwich and told him to sit at the kitchen table. Then I brought Lena out and told her everything was okay. She was still shaking but calmed a little when she saw Kenny was barely older than me. "I'm not staying long," he said with a mouthful of bread. "Just needed somewhere dry tonight. I'll be gone by morning." But I had other plans. "No," I said. "You're staying. At least until we finish something important." He looked at me confused. "Finish what?" I didn't answer. Because that night, something even worse happened. At midnight, the girl who came earlier, the red-haired one, started screaming. Lena and I bolted out of our room. Kenny was already on his feet. We ran toward the guest room Mr. Givens had let her stay in. The door was locked. She was banging from the inside, screaming, "Let me out! Let me out! Help me, please!" I kicked the door as hard as I could. Kenny joined in. It took 3 tries before the old wood cracked and the lock broke. We burst inside, and the room was empty, except for the girl, standing in the middle, tears running down her cheeks, her suitcase wide open and clothes scattered everywhere. "He took my phone," she said, trembling. "He came in through the window, said I owed him rent. When I said I didn't have money, he touched my arm. Said I could pay him another way." I saw red. Lena gasped. Kenny clenched his jaw. "Where did he go?" I asked. She pointed toward the back door. "He ran when he heard someone else coming." I stormed outside with Kenny right behind me. But Mr. Givens was gone. The woods behind the house were quiet, wet and dark. Too quiet. We searched with flashlights, calling his name. Not because we wanted him to answer, but because we wanted him to know we weren't scared anymore. When we returned, the girl was sitting on the floor hugging Lena. She looked broken. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she whispered. "Why doesn't anyone warn people about him?" I sat down next to her and put my hand on her shoulder. "We're going to," I said. The next morning, I brought everyone into the attic. I pulled up the floorboard where I'd hidden the crowbar, hammer, and kerosene. Kenny's eyes widened. "What are you planning?" "Not what you think," I said. "I'm not going to burn the house down." "What then?" "We're going to dig." "Dig?" the red-haired girl asked. "Why?" I pointed to the far wall of the attic, where the old wood was stained and moldy. "There's a loose panel behind there. I found it a week ago. When I pulled it open, I smelled something weird. Like chemicals. Like something was hidden." We pried the wall open with the crowbar. Behind it was a crawl space, thick with dust and spiderwebs. Kenny crawled in first. We followed with flashlights. And that's when we found it. A black box, locked with 2 rusty clips. We dragged it out and opened it. Inside were old VHS tapes, dozens of them, each labeled with names and dates. The girl gasped. "Those are evidence," I said, my voice low. "He recorded them." Kenny turned pale. "He recorded what he did to them." I nodded. "This is how we're going to stop him. We take this to the police. Real proof. They can't ignore it now." The room fell silent. Then Lena whispered, "But what if he finds out before we can?" I turned toward the stairs. Too late. The front door downstairs slammed open. Heavy boots stomped into the house. And Mr. Givens shouted from below, "I know you're hiding something. Get down here. Now." I looked at the box in my hands, then at the others. "We don't run this time," I said. But as we reached the top of the attic stairs, the entire house went dark. The lights, the power, gone. And then we heard the creaking sound of him coming up the stairs, one slow step at a time in the dark. The stairs groaned beneath his weight, each step louder than the last. Creak, thud, creak, thud. We held our breath in the attic, trapped in total darkness. The flashlight had gone out the moment the power died, probably a surge. Or maybe he cut the power himself. Lena's small hand clutched my wrist. I could feel her shaking. Kenny whispered, "He's coming." No one had to say it. I could feel it. I held the box of his tapes tightly to my chest. If he found them, if he knew what we had, it was over. I motioned for the others to move silently back toward the crawl space. We could fit back in there, maybe hide until he passed. It wasn't a good plan, but it was all we had. Then I heard the attic door creak open. My heart jumped into my throat. He was inside. We froze. I could hear his breathing. Slow, raspy, deliberate. "You think you're smart," Mr. Givens said into the darkness. "You think you've figured me out." None of us answered. "I've been doing this a long time," he continued. "You're not the first to snoop around. You won't be the last." Still, we didn't move. Even Lena held her breath. Then he took another step forward, dragging something heavy behind him. Clang, drag, clang, drag. A metal pipe. He was carrying a pipe. "I know every inch of this house," he said. "I know when the floor creaks. I know where the boards are loose. And I know you're up here." Kenny reached for the hammer, slow and quiet. I handed him the crowbar. The red-haired girl, whose name I'd learned was Sophie, took Lena's hand and pulled her back into the crawl space with her. That left just Kenny and me. I could barely see his outline in the dark, but I saw the slow nod he gave me. A signal. We waited. Then, crack. He swung first. The sound of metal hitting would echoed like a gunshot. Kenny's crowbar missed. It hit the attic beam instead. Mr. Givens shouted and lunged. I swung the hammer with all my strength. It connected. A horrible crunch followed. He screamed, high, shrill, almost inhuman. But he didn't fall. He grabbed Kenny by the shirt and slammed him into the wall. I screamed and hit him again, this time in the shoulder. He roared and knocked me back, the hammer flying from my grip. He raised the pipe, ready to strike Kenny. When suddenly, flash, a burst of light lit up the attic. Sophie stood behind him, Lena's school camera in her hands. She snapped another photo flash. He flinched hard, eyes blinded by the burst. Kenny tackled him. They both crashed into the attic wall, shaking the whole house. I scrambled, grabbed the crowbar, and slammed it against the pipe in his hand. It flew across the floor. Kenny rolled away, coughing. Mr. Givens lay still for a moment, then groaned. I didn't wait. I grabbed the tapes, Lena, Sophie, and Kenny, and we ran. Down the stairs, out the front door, and into the street. The neighbor's porch light turned on as we bolted past. I banged on their door. They opened it just in time to see us, sweaty, bruised, and wild-eyed. He attacked us. I cried. We have proof. Please call the police. The man looked at the box in my hands, then at Kenny, who had a gash on his forehead, and Sophie, who was crying silently. He nodded and picked up his phone. Within 5 minutes, sirens wailed through the air. Mr. Givens didn't try to follow us this time. He was still upstairs when they found him, battered, bleeding, but alive. He tried to lie again. Tried to twist the story. But we had the box. And the tapes. And the photos. And the bruises. When the officers saw the contents of the box, they didn't ask any more questions. They arrested him on the spot. We sat in the back of the police cruiser, huddled together beneath an emergency blanket. Lena was quiet. Kenny leaned against the door, his eyes closed. Sophie stared at the sky. I watched them load Mr. Givens into another car. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. Because I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. At the station, they separated us for questioning. I told them everything. What he'd done to Lena, how I'd found the tapes, how Sophie had nearly become his next victim. They took my story seriously now. The proof forced their hand. But there was still one more twist to come. Later that night, while we were resting in the shelter they'd brought us to, a woman in a gray suit came to speak with me. She introduced herself as Detective Amber Hawley. "We've reviewed the contents of the tapes," she said, her voice steady but grim. "You were right to bring them forward." I nodded. "There's something else," she added, her eyes narrowing. "Something we didn't expect." "What?" "Some of the footage. It's not from this house." My heart skipped. She continued, "There are girls in different settings, different rooms, different furniture. Some even from years ago. One of them, a girl named Kara Shaw. She's been missing since 2009. What does that mean?" I asked. "It means Mr. Givens didn't act alone." My stomach turned. "There may be others," she said. "Other people. Other homes. Other girls. And now that he's been arrested, someone might come looking." "Looking for what?" She paused. "For those tapes." That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of him anymore, but because I had a new enemy. One I hadn't seen coming. And somewhere out there, they knew exactly what we had. And they were coming for it. Last night, we traced a few of the VHS labels to open missing person cases. One of the girls, Rachel Tomlinson, disappeared 5 years ago from a town 2 hours from here. Her tape was dated only 3 days before her name was filed as missing. I swallowed. So he took them from other towns? He must have moved them through this house, or somewhere nearby. But what worries me, she said, tapping the folder, is that some of the locations in the footage don't match any known properties under Mr. Givens' name. Which means he was working with someone, I finished. She nodded. We need to know who. And fast. Because news of his arrest has leaked. Leaked? I asked. How? She glanced at her phone, then turned the screen toward me. It was a news article. Local landlord arrested in shocking assault case. Evidence of larger exploitation ring suspected. Below it was a grainy photo of Mr. Givens being shoved into the back of a police car. Social media's already running wild with rumors, she said. Most of it's harmless, but this kind of attention attracts people. People who want to silence the truth. I looked at the article again. There, in the background of the photo, you could see me. Just a blur. But it was enough. Can they find us from this? I asked. They can try. That was all I needed to hear. After she left, I pulled Kenny aside. We need to move, I whispered. He frowned. What? The shelter's protected. Not from people like this, I said. If Mr. Givens had partners, they'll. But it was enough. Can they find us from this? I asked. They can try. That was all I needed to hear. After she left, I pulled Kenny aside. We need to move, I whispered. He frowned. What? The shelter's protected. Not from people like this, I said. If Mr. Givens had partners, they'll. And if they know we were the ones who exposed him, I said, they won't wait around to knock. Kenny stared at me, his jaw tight. Where would we even go? I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I do know we can't stay here. I glanced over my shoulder. Sophie was still in the corner, now flipping slowly through pictures on the camera, her face unreadable. Lena had woken up and was watching us quietly, sensing something wasn't right. I'm not running again, Kenny muttered. I just found people I can trust. I don't want to lose that. You won't, I said. But we can't get comfortable. Not yet. There's more going on here. If we sit still, they'll come for us. All of us. He didn't argue after that. Later that day, we were taken back to the police station to give more formal statements. They asked the same questions: what we'd seen when it started, what Mr. Givens had done. But there were new questions too. Had we seen any unfamiliar cars parked nearby? Did we ever notice him leaving the house late at night? Did we ever hear other voices in the house, men perhaps we didn't recognize? Detective Holly looked more tired than before. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her shirt was wrinkled like she hadn't slept. "We found a key in his jacket," she told me in private. "But it doesn't belong to any lock in his house." "Did he have any storage units?" I asked. "No leases in his name. No cars. But something tells me he didn't do this alone." She pulled out a piece of paper with a phone number scribbled across the top. This number showed up in his phone history. Repeatedly. "Last call was made right before he came home the night you all found the tapes." I leaned forward. "Who does it belong to?" "That's the thing," she said. "It's a burner phone. No name. No ID." I felt my stomach twist. Then she added, "We're trying to track it. But in the meantime, I want you and the others to stay put. We'll move you to a secure location tonight." But it was already too late. That evening, just after sunset, the police escort assigned to drive us to the safe house arrived. It was a plain gray car, unmarked, windows tinted. The man who stepped out wore a uniform, clean, official. But something felt off. I couldn't explain it. His smile was too fixed. His eyes too cold. He didn't ask our names. Didn't even check a list. "You the kids from the Givens case?" he asked, popping the trunk. "Yes," I answered cautiously. He opened the back door. "Let's go. It's a long drive to the safe house." I hesitated. "Where is it?" "North," he said. "Near the old quarry." That stopped me cold. Because earlier that day, Detective Holly had told me the safe house was in Midland, which was south. I took Lena's hand and stepped back. "Where exactly in the north?" He blinked. Just once. Then smiled again. "Don't worry about it." I turned to Kenny and Sophie. "Run." We bolted. The man lunged, reaching for something at his belt, but Kenny tackled him mid-move. The two of them crashed onto the pavement, rolling. I grabbed Lena and yanked her behind a nearby parked car. Sophie screamed as the man threw Kenny off, drew something metallic from his belt, and bang! A single gunshot tore through the air. Everyone froze. Kenny hit the ground with a grunt. I thought he was dead. But then he rolled and crawled behind a trash bin, clutching his arm. He'd been grazed. I turned to Sophie. "Call the cops now." She already had her phone out, dialing with shaking fingers. The man didn't chase us. Instead, he ran to his car, jumped in and peeled off into the street. Tires screeching, disappearing into the night. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. But again they were too late. We were sitting on the curb, Kenny bleeding, Lena crying, Sophie on the phone with dispatch, when Detective Holly arrived. She saw the twisted into something I hadn't seen before. Rage. Detective Holly stepped out of her cruiser, slammed the door, and went straight to Kenny, kneeling beside him. "Where is he? What did he look like?" Kenny winced, clutching his bandaged arm. "Police uniform. Badge number was fake. White guy. Short brown hair. Drove a gray Chevy with no plates." "No plates?" she snapped, standing up and pacing like she wanted to scream. "He said he was taking us north," I added quickly, "to a safe house near the quarry." Holly's eyes narrowed. "There's no safe house up there. That's where the abandoned mine tunnels are. Remote, silent, no signal for miles." I looked at her hard. "He wasn't some wannabe copycat, was he?" "No," she said quietly. "He was part of it." "The ring," I said. She nodded. "We suspected it was bigger than just Givens. Now we know." Sophie looked up from the curb. "They're trying to tie up loose ends." Holly didn't answer that. She didn't need to. The officers arrived a few minutes later and rushed Kenny to a hospital. He was stable, thank God, but his shoulder had been torn open. He'd need stitches, rest. Time. We didn't have time. While Kenny was taken away, the rest of us were moved, this time, under armed escort to an actual police safe house. A small brick building on the edge of town with cameras, double locks and 2 guards stationed at the front. Still, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window again that night, watching the road. Waiting for headlights. Waiting for danger. Because I knew something they didn't. I hadn't told Holly everything. Not yet. While digging through the VHS tapes that day, I'd found a small envelope wedged at the bottom of the box. I hadn't handed it in. Not yet. It wasn't full of pictures. It wasn't filled with names. It had one thing in it. A map. Hand-drawn. Scratched on an old napkin. Marked with red circles. 3 places. One of them was our house. The second, Given's old trailer outside of town. And the third, the quarry. That night, once Lena was asleep, I went to Sophie and showed her the map. She studied it in silence, eyes darting across the lines. You think this is where they brought the girls? Maybe, I said. Or where they hid more evidence. Either way, if we don't go, someone else will. And they won't share it with the cops. Sophie didn't answer for a long time. Then she tucked the napkin into her hoodie pocket and said, When do we leave? Tonight. We waited until the guards changed shifts, about 2:10 a.m. Then we slipped out the back door, climbed the fence, and stole 2 bikes from the alley behind the gas station. The road to the quarry was long and mostly empty. Mist hugged the fields, and fog clung to the trees like ghosts. The whole ride, my mind raced. What if this was a trap? What if the map wasn't a clue but a setup? What if they were waiting for us? But I couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Because somewhere in those tunnels was the rest of the story. And I needed to see it through. We reached the edge of the quarry just before dawn. It was massive. A crater that looked like the earth had opened its mouth to scream. Broken concrete, abandoned trucks, weeds growing over rusted fences. Everything was silent. We left the bikes and moved on foot, slipping between the jagged rocks and shattered walls until we reached the mouth of the mine tunnel. A sign hung above it, barely readable. Restricted property. Hazardous. But someone had been there recently. Fresh boot prints in the dirt. And spray paint. A red X on the side of the mine entrance. Sophie glanced at me. This is it. We stepped inside. It was colder than outside. Damp. The walls dripped with moisture, and the flashlight on my phone barely lit 10 feet ahead. Our footsteps echoed down the stone corridor. After 10 minutes of walking, we found the first door. Metal. Rusted. Locked with a sliding bolt on the outside. Sophie and I exchanged a look. That meant whoever had been inside wasn't meant to come out. I slid the bolt, opened the door, and what we saw inside, I'll never forget. Cots, blankets, chains, plastic bins full of women's clothing, shoes, toothbrushes, all labeled with dates. And on the back wall, a camera, still plugged in, recording. My heart stopped. There were no people here now, but there had been. Sophie ran to the bins and began pulling out contents. Clothes soaked with dried mud, bags labeled with names. Rachel Tomlinson, Karashav, Daisy M. And then, one that made my blood turn to ice. Linash, my baby sister's name. I dropped to my knees, the air gone from my lungs. They had planned to take her. They already had her name. Sophie dropped the bin and stood up. We need to go. We need to go now. We turned to run, but a voice echoed down the tunnel behind us. Slow, low, mocking. You shouldn't have come here. We froze. A figure stepped into the light, blocking the entrance. He wasn't wearing a mask. He didn't need to, because I recognized him. Not from real life, but from one of the tapes. He had been in the background, laughing, watching. Not Mr. Givens. Worse. The buyer. He raised something in his hand. Not a gun. A remote. He pressed it. And suddenly, with a deep, earth-rattling sound, the tunnel behind us collapsed. The explosion was like thunder under our feet. The tunnel behind us groaned, cracked, and then the world fell. Stone and steel and dust crashed down in a deafening wave, sealing the path we came through. I couldn't hear my own scream. I only saw Sophie's mouth wide open in terror, her eyes locked on the rubble. We were trapped. The man with the remote stood in front of the collapsed tunnel, calm, like he'd just shut a door and didn't mind what was behind it. You kids always think you're so clever, he said, stepping forward. Digging where you don't belong. I couldn't breathe. Not because of the dust, but because of what was in that bin. Lena's name. He had targeted her. And if we hadn't found the tapes, if we hadn't fought back, she would have ended up here. The man took another step. Sophie grabbed my arm, pulled me behind an old generator in the corner of the chamber. I've been watching you, he called out. You and your little crew. The moment Givens was arrested, we started cleanup. But you got too close. His boots crunched on gravel. Now we've got a decision to make. He was close. So close I could hear him breathing again. Confident. He didn't know one thing though. We weren't alone. Kenny had followed us. He was supposed to be in the hospital. But something must have told him. Because out of the shadows, like a ghost, Kenny appeared behind him. Blood still soaking through his hospital wrap, but eyes on fire. He had a steel rod in one hand. He didn't say a word. Just swung. The man screamed and dropped to one knee, the remote skidding across the ground. I dove for it, grabbing it before he could. Sophie picked up a nearby pipe and slammed it into his wrist before he could draw a weapon. He crumpled, groaning, but not unconscious. Who are you working with? I shouted, standing over him. Tell me. He looked up, blood running from his temple. You don't know what you've done, he hissed. Then educate me. I snapped. He laughed, wheezing. You think this ends with me? This is just a limb. Cut me off and another will grow back. I felt sick. How many girls? Sophie whispered. He smiled. Didn't answer. That was answer enough. I looked at Kenny. We need to get out of here. There has to be another way. We searched the chamber, past the bins, behind the cots, behind the wall with the camera. And finally, hidden beneath a tarp, we found it. A service tunnel. Narrow, cramped, but passable. We didn't hesitate. We bound the man's hands with cable from the generator and shoved him through the tunnel ahead of us. He didn't talk anymore. When we finally emerged into the gray light of dawn, we were in the woods, maybe a half-mile from the quarry edge. I collapsed on the ground and looked up at the sky. Free. Sophie fell to her knees, sobbing. Kenny just stared into the trees, shaking. We called Detective Holly. It took 15 minutes for the police to arrive. They arrested the man on the spot. He didn't resist. But he smiled the whole time. Like we hadn't won. Like the nightmare wasn't over. Later, Holly told us everything. His name was Mitchell Crane. A contractor who'd helped remodel Givens' house and build safety features, like false walls and underground passages. He was part of a trafficking network, one that stretched far beyond our town. Across counties. Across states. They used homes like Givens. Old rentals. Houses that no one asked questions about. They targeted girls without strong families. Kids in foster care. Runaways. People who could disappear quietly. And they made videos. Sold them. The tapes we found weren't the whole stash. Just Givens' collection. There were others. More houses. More girls. And now the police had a name. A lead. But more importantly, we had something else. Survivors. Sophie decided to go public. She stood in front of cameras and told the truth. About what almost happened to her. About what had happened to others. She named names. She didn't cry. She made them listen. Kenny, after recovering, volunteered to help the police identify other boys who'd gone through the same abuse. Turns out, Givens hadn't only targeted girls. Lena started therapy. She was quiet for weeks, then one day walked into the living room and said, "Can I plant a tree? For the girls." We helped her do it in the backyard of the new house we were moved to. The final chapter? There isn't one. Because people like Givens and Crane aren't one-time monsters. They're part of systems. Of silence. But we made a crack in that system. And the lesson? Silence protects the wicked. But truth, when spoken loud enough, breaks walls. I was just a girl trying to keep my sister safe. And in the end, I did more than that. I made them regret ever coming near us. Forever, I tried to sit up, but my head felt heavy. Pain shot through my shoulder. And the hospital lights were too bright. Everything was spinning. James moved closer, still smiling. But it wasn't the smile I remembered. It wasn't warm. It was tight. Cold. Where are my kids? I whispered, my voice dry like paper. He pulled up a chair. Sat down calmly like he had all the time in the world. They're fine, he said. They're at a safe house with someone I trust. Who? I asked, trying to push myself upright. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward. You weren't supposed to find out everything. That was never the plan. You were supposed to live quietly, raise the kids, stay out of sight. I stared at him. You knew. You knew the truth all along. He nodded, his eyes narrowing. Yes. I helped Diana take you. I stayed close because it was my job. My stomach dropped. Your job? I asked, almost too afraid to hear the answer. He leaned back. I work for the same people your father tried to expose. I was placed in your life years ago. We never thought you'd find anything. But then Carol got too close. She had to be handled. Tears burned in my eyes. You let her die. He didn't even blink. She gave us no choice. I clenched my fists. So what now? Are you going to kill me too? No, he said, standing up. We still need you, Anna. There are things in your head, memories. Clues your mother might have left with you when you were little. You don't even know they're there yet. But they're there. You're lying. You have no idea how important you are, he said. But someone else does. Someone who's gone rogue. Evelyn gave you something, didn't she? I looked away. He grabbed my chin roughly and forced me to look at him. The key, he hissed. Where is it? I said nothing. He let go. You'll give it to me. One way or another. Then he walked to the door, knocked twice, and a nurse came in with a clipboard. Except, she wasn't a nurse. I recognized her. It was the same woman from the cemetery. Evelyn. She didn't even look at James. Just walked up to my bed and said, Discharge papers. You're ready to leave. James looked confused. She's not well enough. She's well enough, Evelyn said sharply. Doctor's orders. James hesitated. Then Evelyn leaned closer and whispered something in his ear. I couldn't hear what she said, but whatever it was, it made him pale. He backed away slowly, nodded once, and left the room. Evelyn turned to me. Can you walk? I nodded slowly. She handed me a pair of clothes in a bag. Get dressed. We have to move. Now. 5 minutes later, we were out the back door of the hospital, into a waiting black car. A man was in the driver's seat. Quiet, eyes always scanning. Who is he? I asked. A friend, Evelyn said. Ex-intelligence. We don't have much time. As we drove, Evelyn told me the rest of the truth. My father hadn't just found a secret. He had stolen proof. Videos, names, financial records. All showing how a private security company, Orion Corps, had been spying on American citizens, running illegal experiments, and controlling certain people through manipulation and drugs. When he tried to go public, they killed him. And they've been hunting his daughter, me, ever since. Your mother hid a backup of his files, Evelyn said. The key I gave you unlocks the vault where they are. If they get that information before we do, they'll erase everything. They'll make you disappear too. I held the key in my hand. The weight of it suddenly felt like carrying a whole mountain. They have James, I said. No, she corrected. You had James. They just flipped him. Years ago. I looked down. He said the kids were safe. Evelyn looked me dead in the eye. He lied. I froze. The car swerved sharply, then stopped in front of a small church on a hill. We got out quickly, ran through the back door, down a long hallway, and into a dusty office. She opened a hidden panel in the wall. Behind it was a vault. It looked like a giant safe, old but strong. I slid the key in. It clicked. Inside were tapes, papers, photos, and something I didn't expect. A small locket. I opened it. Inside was a tiny chip, like a memory card. This, Evelyn said, is what they've been after. It holds the entire Project Echo archive. I stared at it. Why didn't my mother tell me? She didn't want to put you in danger. She was going to wait until you were older. But she died before she could. Suddenly the building shook. A loud bang. Gunfire outside. Evelyn grabbed my hand. They found us. We ran through a back passage, up a stairwell, through a hatch that led to the roof. A helicopter hovered nearby. Evelyn shouted into a radio. "We're on the roof. Go, go." A metal ladder dropped down. But before we could grab it, a bullet struck Evelyn in the shoulder. She dropped. I screamed, trying to hold her up. She pressed something into my palm. "The chip." "Go," she said. "Take it. Expose them. I can't leave you. You have to." I climbed the ladder, tears pouring down my face. As the helicopter lifted off, I looked back and saw men in black closing in on her, dragging her away. I screamed, but there was nothing I could do. She was gone. Again. That night, I stayed in a hidden location with the pilot and Evelyn's contact. We played the files. We saw everything. The experiments. The murders. The lies. People in power, judges, officers, even politicians, all part of it. And James? He was listed in the files too. Recruitment date, 2013. Mission: observe and influence Anna Lane. Neutralize if necessary. The betrayal crushed me all over again. But now I had the truth. I had the weapon. I just had to choose how to use it. I sat there staring at the chip. Then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I opened the message. This time it was a video of my kids, tied to chairs, mouths covered, eyes wide with fear. A voice said, "You've made too many wrong moves, Anna. The next one will cost you everything." The screen went black. I screamed. I slammed the phone down and covered my mouth with both hands, trying not to cry out again. My whole body was shaking. My babies, my children, were in danger. Tied up. Terrified. I could still see the fear in their little eyes. James had them. Or maybe it wasn't even James anymore. Maybe it never was. I looked around the safe house. Evelyn's contact, his name was Theo, stood in the corner, silent and pale. He had seen the video too. He didn't ask if it was real. We both knew it was. "I have to get them back," I said. He nodded. "We will. But if we move without a plan, they'll kill them." I shook my head. "They won't. Not yet. They need the chip. That's why they're using the kids." Theo took a step forward. "Then we use that to our advantage." We spent the next 2 hours going through the files again. Every photo. Every document. Every recording. And then we found it. A location. A black site, hidden under a warehouse 2 hours from the city. Labeled in the Project Echo files as Facility Zeta. That was where they brought their targets when the threats didn't work anymore. That had to be where they were holding my kids. I wanted to run in there screaming, but Theo stopped me. "We go in smart," he said. "Silent. We only get one shot at this." We left just after midnight. Theo knew how to move quietly. He had once worked for Orion Corps too, but quit when he saw what they were doing. He knew their security systems, their patterns, their blind spots. We parked far away and walked the rest of the way in the dark. I carried the chip in a metal case around my neck, hidden under my shirt. When we reached the warehouse, Theo pointed to the left side. "There's a side door. Unlocked. I'll take out the power quietly while you go in through the hallway. Wait for my signal." I nodded. Every step I took inside that building felt like walking into a nightmare. It was cold, silent, and smelled like bleach and metal. I passed rows of empty rooms with white walls, security cameras, and heavy doors. Then I heard a small voice. "Mommy." I froze. That voice. It was my daughter, Lila. I followed the sound, my heart pounding. I turned a corner. And there they were. Both of them. Lila and Max. In a room with glass walls, sitting on the floor, still tied but alive. Tears ran down my face as I rushed in. I opened the door. "Lila. Max." They looked up. "Mommy." I dropped to my knees, hugged them both so tight. I couldn't stop crying. But then, I heard footsteps. Too many. I turned around. And there he was. James. His gun pointed right at me. Behind him were 2 other men in black uniforms. He looked tired. Angry. But not surprised. "You're harder to kill than I thought," he said. I stood, shielding the kids behind me. "You lied to me. You made me love you." His eyes flickered. I didn't want to. Not at first. But after a while, It got real. That's why I told them to take the kids instead of killing you. I wanted to give you one last chance. You call this a chance? I shouted. He stepped closer. Give me the chip, Anna. Right now. And you all walk out of here alive. I pulled it from around my neck slowly. But I didn't hand it over. I held it tight. No. James blinked. What? I stared straight into his eyes. I said no. He raised the gun. Don't be stupid. And then, Theo's voice rang out from the intercom system above. Everyone down. This building is rigged with C4. You shoot her, we all go boom. James froze. What? Theo's voice came again. Calm. Steady. I've got eyes on every corner. You move, I push the button. Step back. James growled. He's bluffing. But the men behind him weren't sure. They looked around uncertain. Then, one of them dropped his weapon. James turned. Cowards. I used the moment. I rushed forward, knocked the gun from his hand. We struggled. I hit him. He hit me back. Blood poured from my nose, but I didn't care. I grabbed the gun from the floor, pointed it at him. Don't make me, I whispered. James laughed. You won't do it. Then he lunged. I closed my eyes and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. He fell. Silence. Theo rushed in seconds later, cutting the kids' ropes, checking on me. I sat on the floor, dazed, covered in bruises, the gun shaking in my hand. It was over. James was gone. We left that place and burned it to the ground. Later that week, I met with a journalist. One I could trust. We released every file. Project Echo. Orion Core. The names. The proof. It made headlines around the world. People were arrested. Investigations were launched. And finally, I was free. Free from the lies. Free from the fear. Evelyn's body was never found. But I like to believe she's still out there. Watching. Protecting. I moved to a quiet town with Lila and Max. We changed our names again. I don't tell people who I was. Only who I am now. A mother. A fighter. A survivor. Sometimes at night I sit alone and wonder. Did James ever really love me? Was any of it real? I don't know. But I do know this. Love without truth is just another trap. And silence can be the loudest kind of betrayal. So I tell my children every day. Always speak up. Always fight for what's right. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. 'Cause if you don't, someone else will write your story for you. And you may not survive it. The world around me seemed to blur. I couldn't hear the news anchor anymore. All I saw was the red banner flashing on the screen. Escaped. Armed. Dangerous. My father, no, the man who pretended to be my father, was out. Again. And this time I knew deep in my bones that he wasn't running to hide. He was coming back. To take someone. To finish something. To destroy me. Rachel was already on her phone, calling Detective Riley. He escaped during transport, she whispered, pacing the room. They were moving him to a higher security facility after your mom's breakdown. 2 guards dead. 1 in critical condition. Emily. He's lost his mind. I stood in the middle of the common room, holding Grace and staring at Hope asleep in her crib. My legs were frozen in place. My arms felt like stone. Sister Helen came in moments later, keys jangling. We're not staying here, she said firmly. Go pack the baby's things. Now. I blinked. Where will we go? A safe house. One that he doesn't know about. I didn't ask questions. I grabbed 2 bags shoved in diapers, formula bottles, pacifiers, blankets, onesies. Rachel zipped up the baby's sleep sacks and swaddled them close. The shelter's van was already waiting out back. As we pulled away, I watched the shelter disappear behind us, the only place I'd ever truly called home. A new fear crept into my chest. What if we never stopped running? The safe house was on a hill, surrounded by iron gates and hidden behind thick trees. It looked more like a cottage than a shelter, but there were bars on the windows and locks on every door. Inside were only 2 other women and their children. Everyone was silent, on edge. We were shown a private room, just big enough for 2 cribs and a cot. I laid Grace and Hope down and sat on the floor between them, refusing to sleep. Rachel brought me tea, but I couldn't drink it. You should try to rest, she said softly.
No, he whispered.
Not until he's dead or behind bars again. She didn't argue. Outside, thunder rumbled. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier. Somehow, it made the silence worse. The next morning, a police officer arrived with a folder. He handed it to me with a grave expression. Thomas left something behind, he said. We found it in his cell. It's a journal. He wrote to you. I opened it with shaking hands. The handwriting was neat, precise. Each page written carefully, like it mattered to him. It was all addressed to me. Emily, it began. You always thought you knew the story, but you never really did. You thought I was the monster. But I was only following a path laid out for me. The world made me. And soon, you'll understand that you and I were not so different after all. Page after page, he spilled twisted thoughts, stories from his childhood, how he was abused, how love became confusion. It wasn't an apology. It was a manifesto, a threat hidden behind pity. And then near the back, Grace was mine, even if your mother lied. And hope is more mine than you think. Check the birth certificate. I dropped the book like it was on fire. Liar, I breathed. He's lying. Rachel looked up. What? What did he say? I raced to my bag and pulled out Hope's documents. Her birth certificate. Her medical forms. All the files I'd kept in a plastic folder. And then I saw it. Father unknown. No DNA record. No paternity listed. No medical history from him. Because I had never told anyone. Not even myself. Not really. When I was assaulted by him as a child, I tried to believe it hadn't started early enough to be her father. I told myself I was just 15 when I got pregnant. That it had been a boy from school. That it wasn't him. But now, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at all. And suddenly, my entire body began to shake. What if Hope was his? What if both of my girls were tied to him by blood? Rachel tried to calm me, but I was already spiraling. If she's his, what does that mean for her? What if she has his temper? What if she grows up and... She's not him, Rachel said firmly. She's you. You're raising her. She will be better. But he thinks she's his, I whispered. He'll come for her. Rachel was quiet, because we both knew it was true. And sure enough, 2 nights later he did. It was after midnight. I was rocking Hope gently, humming softly, while Grace snored in her crib. The house was quiet. Then click. The power went out. The white noise machine stopped. The hallway light disappeared. The heater shut down. Everything went silent. Too silent. I jumped to my feet, clinging to Hope. I rushed to the door. The hallway was pitch black. I reached for the emergency flashlight in the drawer, but it was missing. My heart began to race. I grabbed Grace from the crib and backed into the corner of the room, holding both babies in my arms, whispering to them, trying to keep them from crying. I heard a door creak down the hall. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I tried to reach my phone, but it slipped out of my pocket onto the floor. I couldn't let go of the babies to grab it. The footsteps got louder. Heavier. Closer. Then our door handle jiggled. I held my breath. The door creaked open. The silhouette of a man filled the frame. Lightning flashed outside the window. And for one brief second I saw his face. My father. Inside the house. His voice soft and slow. Emily, give them to me. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'll raise them now. I'll do it right this time. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. But I felt something shift inside me. Something I hadn't felt before. Rage. I laid the girls gently behind the bed, grabbed the metal lamp from the nightstand, and stood up, breathing fast. I'm not a little girl anymore, I said through my teeth. And you'll never touch them. He laughed. You'd hit your own father? You were never my father. Then I swung. The lamp smashed against the side of his head. He stumbled back, growling like an animal. I hit him again. And again. Until he dropped to the floor. Bleeding. Then I screamed. Help! He's here. Doors slammed open. Lights flickered on. Backup generators powered up. Officers burst in. They tackled him before he could move. Handcuffed him. dragged him broken and groaning down the hallway. Grace screamed. Hope wailed. I fell to my knees sobbing into the floor. It was over. Really over. The next day, in a private hospital wing, Detective Riley came to see me. He looked tired, weathered, but relieved. He's not going anywhere this time, he said. He's been charged with escape, assault, attempted kidnapping, attempted murder. Good, I whispered. I read his journal, Riley added. The man was twisted. But you, Emily, you turned all of that pain into protection, into strength. I didn't want any of this, I said. But you chose to fight anyway, he replied. And now, because of that, those two girls will grow up free. I looked over at Hope and Grace, sleeping side by side in the hospital crib. For the first time, their faces were peaceful. No shadows. No fear. Just quiet. But then, Riley paused at the door. There's something else, he said. DNA test results. From your case. I turned slowly. He handed me a sealed envelope. Are you ready to know the truth about Hope's father? He asked. I held the envelope in my hands, heart pounding. The truth was inside. And once I opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at the envelope in my hand. It felt heavier than it should. Like it was holding not just a paper, but every fear, every memory, every unanswered question that had haunted me for years. Rachel sat beside me on the hospital bed, her hand resting gently on mine. You don't have to open it now, she whispered. But I did. I had to know. Slowly I peeled it open. The paper inside was crisp, folded neatly. I unfolded it once, then twice. My eyes scanned the words. Paternity test result. Subject: Hope Anderson. Alleged father: Thomas Anderson. Probability of paternity: 99.998%. I couldn't breathe. Rachel leaned over, reading the results silently. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around me. It was true. He was her father. Hope, the baby I held, fed, bathed, rocked, kissed, was his daughter. And mine. The pain was deep but different this time. It wasn't just grief. It was shame. And guilt. And anger. Not at Hope. Never at Hope. But at myself. 'Cause deep down, a part of me had always known. And I had tried to forget. Tried to rewrite the past in my head so I could survive. But now there was no more hiding. I looked over at the hospital crib. Hope was still asleep, her tiny fists curled under her chin. She looked just like Grace in some ways. But now I saw him in her too. His nose. His dark lashes. His cheekbones. I didn't want to see it. But I did. And I hated myself for it. I can't raise her, I whispered. Rachel turned sharply. What? She's his, I said, choking on the words. What if she grows up like him? What if it's in her blood to be like that? What if every time I look at her, all I see is him? Rachel gripped my shoulders. Emily, stop. You don't mean that. I do, I said, tears spilling down my face. I don't want to, but I do. I love her, but I'm scared of her. What kind of mother feels that way? The kind who's been through hell, she said firmly. The kind who never got to be a child herself. The kind who is trying every single day not to break. I sobbed into my hands. I don't want her to hate me. But what if I'm the one who messes her up? Rachel was quiet for a moment, then said something I never forgot. Blood might have made her, but you made her whole. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window in the hospital room, staring out at the city lights. I thought about everything. My mother. My childhood. The way I had begged her for help and she had turned away. The way she had covered her ears instead of listening to my screams. And now, I was dangerously close to doing the same to my own child. I had to make a choice. Would I run away from the past? Or would I face it, ugly, painful, terrifying as it was, and fight for something better? The next morning I made a decision. We went back to the shelter. And I asked to speak to a trauma counselor. Not just for me but for the girls too. I was done running. It was time to rebuild. Even if the pieces were shattered. Over the next few months, life became a strange mix of healing and haunting. There were quiet days. Feeding the babies, reading them bedtime stories, taking cautious walks in the garden. There were hard days. Nightmares that woke me in sweat, panic attacks when I heard keys in a lock, moments when hope cried and my body stiffened without reason. And then there were breakthroughs. Like the first time Hope said "Mama." Or the day Grace toddled over and hugged her sister without being told. Rachel stayed by my side, never pushing, always patient. Sister Helen enrolled me in a parenting program and GED classes. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control over something, my future. But then one rainy morning, something unexpected happened. I received a letter. It was from my mother. My hands trembled as I held the envelope. It had no return address. Just my name, written in careful, familiar handwriting. I hesitated. Rachel saw the look on my face. "You don't have to open it," she said. But I did. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The letter read, "Emily, I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to understand. I was broken long before you were born. Your father. He wasn't always a monster. He became one slowly. And I let it happen because I was too afraid to stop him. I failed you. I knew what he did. I saw it. And I turned away because I didn't want to believe it was true. I thought silence was easier. But it wasn't. I see that now. And I know I can never fix what I broke. But if there's any chance, even the smallest one, that you can look at me again one day, not with love but with peace, I'll wait. Always. Mom." I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because it made me cry, but because it didn't. There were no tears left for her. Only numbness. Rachel asked, "What does it say?" I folded it and placed it in the drawer. "She's sorry," I said simply. "Do you believe her?" "No." But I didn't hate her either. I just let go. That same afternoon, as I watched the girls sleep side by side, I realized something. Every adult in my life had failed me. My mother. My father. Everyone who should have protected me. But I was still here. And because of that, Hope and Grace would not grow up broken. They would have love, stability, safety. Me. I would not become the kind of mother I had. I would break the cycle, even if it cost me everything. 2 weeks later, the counselor pulled me aside after a session. "There's an opportunity," she said. "It's a housing scholarship for survivors. You qualify. You'd get your own apartment. A small stipend. Support services. It's not much, but it's a fresh start." I blinked. A home. My own home. With locks I controlled. No shared rooms. No watching over my shoulder. No packed bags waiting by the door. Just peace. I looked over at my daughters, playing on the soft mat with blocks and stuffed animals. They looked safe. I looked back at the counselor and nodded. "I'll take it." That evening, I packed our things. Just one suitcase and a diaper bag. Rachel cried as she hugged me goodbye. "You saved me," I told her. "You saved yourself," she said. "And that's the hardest thing anyone can do." As we drove away from the shelter for the last time, Grace waved through the car window. Hope giggled in my lap. The sun was setting behind us. And for the first time in years, I was moving forward. But just when I thought I'd escaped everything, just when I believed the past had loosened its grip, a phone call came. From a prison halfway across the state. They wanted to inform me of something. Thomas Anderson had been found dead in his cell. And beside his body, a letter. Addressed to me. Again. And this one was sealed with blood.